Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're back on the 2.29 dev server, and it's time to have a look at the first Hungarian vehicle that will be available to you in the Italian tech tree. Now, if you don't know, the Hungarians are coming into Italy, and they're going to be part of a sub-tech tree, which is in their main tech tree, and it basically goes down the right-hand lane with a few of the vehicles spattered in for AAs. The first one in the line is the Csaba, and what's interesting is they're bringing in, obviously, the research changes where they are disconnecting the rank 1 stuff from the rank 2, so it's easier to move from rank 1 into rank 2, and also at the same time, it means that you don't have to actually research this thing to get the Turan 1. I still would say give it a go, since it is the first vehicle for the Hungarians, and, well, it seems quite fun in its own little way. The Csaba is a rank 1 battle rating 1.3 vehicle, has access to a 20mm Solothurn gun, which really isn't very good, if I'm honest with you. When I compare this to a lot of other vehicles that are around similar BRs, it does struggle in terms of firepower. Kind of excels in other areas, though. The vehicle has access to a pretty decent engine of 95 horsepower. Since it's only 6 tons, this means that it can motor around at a pretty good click, and because of the transmission, it can go as fast forwards as it does backwards, meaning that getting in and out of dodge is pretty easy to do. Also has 2 drivers technically, even though one is called a machine gunner. If they're both labeled as a driver, if your front one got knocked out, you could still be able to move, which would be kind of cool. You do have a coaxial 8mm 3440M as well. Doesn't really penetrate a lot, but nice to mark targets, I suppose. The vehicle doesn't have a lot of armor. The most you're looking at is 13mm. So the only thing that this is stopping is maybe a 30 cal, and that's about it. Even from the side, 7mm is seen as strong if you have a look at the colors of the armor. So yeah, not great at the end of the day. With 13mm, the chance of ricocheting stuff not even being high, and overall having about 22mm worth of armor, even straight on, really doesn't paint a great picture. But if you're playing this thing correctly, you shouldn't really get shot too much, and you should use its mobility to be able to go around the place and also go to different areas and try and annihilate the enemy from the sides. And with the turret rotation speed the way that it is, the general targeting speed being pretty good on the gun, and also the gun depression, that should be quite easy to do. Looking at the gun itself, you get access to a APHE round. This pens at maximum 35mm, which really isn't that good. But when it does pen, it also does quite a decent amount of splash damage. I have found with the gun, though, sometimes you have to penetrate a few times to be able to annihilate crew. So for a 20mm, you would want a little bit more. It doesn't have a great fire rate either. That's something that has to be noted. The actual sound effects for it are bugged, so they don't work properly. But I'm sure when it comes to launch it will, otherwise that would kind of suck, you know. It basically just tells you the wrong setup. So comparing it to some of the other vehicles that Italy has, a 1.3, you've got the AS-42, which has actually a little bit more pen on the APIT, and also on the HVAP it has nearly double the pen, and of course this is an AA. You also have stuff like the AB41, which has the 20mm, and once again has the HVAP, so pen's like 10mm more. So it's kind of interesting with the Csaba that even at a slightly higher BR, this thing is outdone by, these types of vehicles quite aggressively. Instead, as I said, you're going to have to work on its mobility, and that's pretty much it. The Hungarians are coming in with a few interesting camos, though. The standard one is just a green, but they do have 2 kind of tricolors, a standard tricolor, then a wavy tricolor, and a winter 2. This is on all of their vehicles for the Second World War, and afterwards they do get some different ones as well. So no smokes, no stabilizer, nothing really like that. You basically just have a wheeled vehicle which actually has some pretty high clearance and also 4-wheel drive, so turning is a lot easier compared to other vehicles. Now, as I said, the gun itself, when it comes to its penetration, not great. When it comes to its post-pen, you can see, not great. You have to specifically hit the guys. There is a bit of splash. I was actually shooting a Tetrarch earlier, and what was happening with it was it would pen the driver, and there you go, it would orange the rest of the crew. So you'd have to finish off with a secondary shot to finish them off. Now, I said the audio was bugged on the gun, and well, here you go. It's pretty bugged. It's using the 20mm sound from the Italian gun, which has a much higher fire rate than this one, so that's why it can be a little bit confusing. If this thing gets fully up-tiered, there's not really a lot you're going to be able to do with it. It basically just becomes a vehicle to use artillery with, but at its tier, like with the amount of mobility it has, you can see that we're easily getting up to about 40 kilometers an hour without even thinking. And then also, if you go backwards, you can get up to decent speeds as well. Then it means that you can, on a lot of the smaller maps that you see at the lower tiers, you can get into positions early, attack, and be able to flank stuff and have a bit of fun. It's not going to be one of those vehicles that will set the world alight. Like, it's not a Panzer IIc at this VR. Once again, you can see the post-pen effect there, and how it can struggle with doing damage in that way. But at the same time, it's just one of those which kind of gives people an introduction into the history of Hungary, what they kind of had available at the time in the Second World War, and hopefully will mean that people kind of start researching about them. Being a nation, Hungary is not really one that you hear too much about. In the Second World War, it does have a lot of interesting things happening to it, but most people kind of brush it off because, of course, the whole minor Axis nation setup. But they do have some pretty cool things, including the vehicles themselves, the Terrans, of course, and the Zarinyis. So having a kind of starter area to go from, and also the Solitaire gun on top of it, means that people can maybe use it as a way of not just enjoying the early echelons of the Hungarian vehicles, but also getting into the history and everything that's going on. Hopefully people enjoy this thing. I personally will, but also at the same time, it's going to be one of those that I research and then spade probably within about 5 matches, and then kind of forget that it exists. That's just kind of the setup though that I have, and I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy this if they're new to the Italian tree, trying to grind out the Hungarian vehicles. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.